in the mid 90s, one of the great books on sex came out. It was that they collected data, and they had really good data, unlike most sex surveys, which just ask people who are willing to talk about their sex lives, which you get a very biased response because people who aren't into sex don't answer. Um, but they had measured all sorts of sexual behaviors. Have you ever engaged in anal sex and blah blah blah. Uh, and I looked at their tables going through it, and over, the most educated and the least educated women were really quite different, whereas the most educated and the least educated men were about the same. And then it was the same for religion. The most religious women and the least religious women have very different sex lives, whereas for men, they were remarkably similar. So there are two big social forces. And ironically, the authors of the book didn't seem to notice this. They commented on it once or twice, but it was there over and over in chapter after chapter. So for some reason, I was lucky it kind of leapt out at me. The two big social forces, education and religion, and they have opposite effects. More education leads to more sex, more religion leads to less sex, more religiosity leads to less sex, and it's true for masturbation and oral sex and all kinds of behaviors. So that was to me a nice and fairly elegant demonstration that the female sex drive changes more than men. And I embarked on a big literature review to look at that in other ways. So there are studies of immigration. And when you move from one country to another, the men tend to stay about the same. They keep their old country sex morals, whereas the women adjust to the new one much more readily. So over and over, we found this pattern there. It even applied. What I learned in reading the research in the sex field is there were two big camps, two major theories. One was the sort of feminist, social constructionist that they believe there's some biology involved in sex and some role of hormones and stuff, but basically who wants to do what to whom, in what position, how many times, all that stuff, that is a matter of learning and social influence and stuff like that. And that obviously got a big boost from the sexual revolution because behavior across the culture changed very radically in 20 years. And then the other view was the evolutionary view that the desire for sex is based on ancestors and what led to the most successful reproduction, and that it's hardwired, and that and they believe, of course, there's some impact of social factors and pressures, but a lot can be traced back to that. And the two, they were not just two rival theories; they hated each other. They they despise and criticize, and young people entering the field had a problem doing research because you have to align yourself with one or the other, and then you don't know who's going to review your paper when you try to publish it, and if you say something wrong, the other side's going to have. So what they were starting to do is just publish their data with hardly any theoretical elaboration. Well, what I also noted, though, is that on the one side, the feminists, they tended to be more women. The evolutionists tended to be more men. And so I thought, well, maybe intuitively, maybe they both have a point. It's just intuitively they think the other is so wrong, but it's because men and women are different. Uh, the women know that whether they will do something with someone depends on all kinds of circumstances of what it means and what other people are doing, and implications for the relationship and how you view yourself and all that. Um, whereas the men, it's your desire for sex is just there every day, and you feel it. And there's sort of like this beast that shows up when you're 13 years old or something, and you live with it ever. And there were women who switched to be lesbians for political reasons. They thought, oh yeah, well, having sex with men is sleeping with the enemy, and so they would just switch and have sex with women for a while. Whereas for men, the idea if the biggest male athletes and the president and I don't know who else went on TV advising you to go gay and become a homosexual, that wouldn't make the slightest bit of difference. I can't imagine a man changing his sexual orientation for that. So that suggested that, again, that there's this greater flexibility in the female sex drive. I later learned one of my colleagues here in Utah was studying lesbians, studying female homosexuals. She assembled a big sample in the area, but she said, "Oh, it's such a research problem because she's in my sample, but then she breaks up with her girlfriend, and now she's dating a man. Oh, you're messing up my data." Yeah, obviously she's not really going to say that to the young woman, but she said women just seem to switch back and forth without it being nearly as big a deal as for men. Even the ratio of bisexuals to homosexuals, because most people are just plain heterosexual, and that's that. But of all the people who've ever had sex with someone of their same gender, some say, well, I'm purely homosexual, and some say I'm bisexual. The women have a lot more bisexuals as opposed to the pure homosexuals. The men, it seems, you're one or the other, and the bisexual. There are bisexuals, of course, but not nearly as many. So uh, anyway, that was the argument with the erotic plasticity, that it's the degree to which the sex drive changes in response to social and cultural and situational factors, and that's just much higher in women than men. And there's no value judgment, I don't really see. I suppose it's a little bit of an advantage to be more flexible because you can adapt to new situations. But as I gave talks about this, every so often a woman would come up to me and said she was proud of her erotic plasticity. I never heard any man say he was proud to be inflexible in sex, but it's a pretty small difference. To me, it's a neutral thing, but it has lots of implications. There's a big study that came out after I'd published that, looking at it was done in the UK. You guys have those great data sets where you track people, large sections of the population over many years, and somebody had gone through those, and you do a big factor analysis to look at which kind of problems go together. And so they looked at where sexual problems, what they correlated with. And for men, sexual problems correlated with physical problems, physical health things. And for women, it correlated with mental health problems. And it again suggests that issues of meaning and understanding and so on are much more prominent. It's why Viagra was able to come out, and for men, the issue is a physical thing. If you can get an erection, problem solved, and you don't need to have 5 years of psychoanalysis and analyzing your dreams and talking about your mother or anything like that. Uh, and and for women, well, it's much harder to do that because um, there it's much more a matter of understanding feelings and meanings and implications there, and a purely physical intervention doesn't seem to do it as much.